course, many of us know about the role the United States Air Force played during the Second World War in our region. It was called the Friendly Invasion and saw 350,000 servicemen pass through the east of England between 1942 and 1945.
Well, now that story is getting the Hollywood treatment in a new £220 million series produced by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg.
My heroes. It focuses on 100th Bomb Group, which was based at Thorpe Abbotts Airfield near Diss, from where Tanya Mercer reports.
We came from every corner of the country with a common purpose.
Go, 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 go!
To bring the war to Hitler's doorstep.
A story of courage, determination and loss.
The 8th will be sending up the largest air armada ever assembled in the history of mankind.
Masters of the Air is based on the incredible story of the 100th Bomb Group of the United States Air Force as they flew bombing missions over Nazi Germany during the Second World War. The group was based here at Thorpe Abbotts Airfield in South Norfolk, where the 100th Bomb Group Museum is now based.
And this is the glass house on top of the control tower at Thorpe Abbotts. And here we have a diorama that shows you what the airfield would have looked like in 1943. This is where all the flight operations were controlled from. And out in front of us here we would have had the main runway, and immediately to our left there would have been 5 hard stands on which the aircraft would be maintained. And also in front of the control tower we have the perimeter track where the aircraft would have taxied before taking off.
Within the original buildings are the stories, photos and medals of the young men who flew the dangerous missions. And death was a very real prospect. At the beginning of the campaign, 75% of crews were either killed or taken as prisoners of war. In October 1943, the group was sent on missions to Bremen and Münster. In 2 nights, they lost 190 men. They became known as the Bloody Hundredth. But one of those to beat the odds was Major Robert Rosenthal, known as Rosie, and played in the series by Nate Mann.
He was one of the luckiest aviators in the 100th Bomb Group, and he ended up being the legend of the 100th. On his 3rd mission, they sent out 13 aircraft and he was the only one that came back. He was shot down twice. He actually flew 52 missions.
And it's upon these characters and stories that the series is based. For 5 years, directors, producers, set designers, actors and writers have spent time researching here with the museum volunteers. One of the characters featured in the series is Harry Crosby. He was a group navigator and involved in the infamous Bremen raid, during which the plane he was travelling in had all its navigational equipment blown out. Harry managed to navigate the plane back to the UK and got it as far as Ludham before it made an emergency landing. After the war, he actually wrote this autobiography, A Wing and a Prayer, and that's one of the books on which the Masters of the Air series is based. For the volunteers, it's exciting to see what comes from the series, but critical, the memory and stories of those that served here are honoured.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see it. As long as it does justice to the 100th Bomb Group and the veterans, then I'll be happy. It's going to be a very big thing for the museum. I think the story will become worldwide, it will be global, and I'm sure the visitor numbers will reflect that as well.
Ron grew up alongside the base and has volunteered here for 30 years. He's met a lot of the veterans. For him, this drama is a very emotional one, but something that can never fully explain the courage of the crews.
You had to be brave to go up in the terrible low temperatures they did, come back probably next day or the day after, they had to go and do it all again. With the loss of best friends, perhaps, it was those who were there were the only ones who exactly know what it was like.
We're getting through this, even if the odds are stacked against us.
This series will no doubt bring another terrifying period of the Second World War to life. But at the very heart of the drama and the spectacle lie the sacrifice and courage of real men who gave so much in the fight for freedom. Tanya Mercer, ITV News, Thorpe Abbots.
Wow, just amazing.
What a story, and it's so deserving of a wider audience as well.
Yeah, very much so. I interviewed one of the pilots from that era a long time ago, and I said, "You guys are heroes." He said, "No, the heroes are in the cemeteries."
Oh.
Very humble and modest people, and of course, bringing their stories to life, you then know what they went through.
Yeah. Well, the new series was premiered in London last night with all the big stars, but more importantly, the modern incarnation of the US Air Force crew based in Suffolk also got a sneak peek before everyone else.
Quite right, too. The 100th Air Refuelling Wing had their own showing at their base in Mildenhall, all dressed to the T in their uniforms, of course.
But next tonight, last night we told you how Hollywood is shining its light on a small village in Norfolk.
Yeah, it was a great story. The new Masters of the Air drama series tells the story of an American wartime bomber crew that flew its dangerous missions from Thorpe Abbots Airfield. It involves big names like Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks and Austin Butler, and it's generated a bit of a buzz, as you can imagine. Well, that will no doubt come as welcome news for tourism group Visit East of England, which is running a big new campaign to attract more visitors from the US.
Well, we're joined by Pete Waters from Visit East of England. Hello, Pete. I bet you were rather excited when you heard that this series was based in our part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, specifically because we actually ran a project 6 years ago called The Friendly Invasion, and we brought over the scriptwriter, John Orloff, one of the executive producers, Kirk Sadowski, and also the author of Masters of the Air, Don Miller. And at that point, Home Box Office, HBO, who did Band of Brothers in the Pacific, they'd actually pulled out. So when we brought them over here to do a fact-finding mission, they weren't actually sure whether this marvellous, spectacular Masters of the Air miniseries was actually going to happen.
I'm so pleased it is, but there are only a small number of volunteers we hear at this little part of Norfolk. Do you think that they will be able to cope if there is a sudden influx of visitors?
Yeah, I think obviously Masters of the Air is going to produce a huge amount of interest in the east of England. I mean, for instance, when Band of Brothers aired in 2001, I spoke to Normandy Tourism, and they reported a 40% uplift in North American visitors to the D-Day beaches. So if we can expect something like that, you know, almost a second friendly invasion of North Americans to the east of England over the next few years, that would be very welcome for tourism. And of course, yeah, we have lots of dedicated groups of volunteers who run the memorial groups and the museums, but we also have fantastic assets that are open all the time, like here at the American Library in Norwich, also at the American Cemetery in Madingley, and of course the American Air Museum at the Imperial War Museum at Duxford. We're launching a campaign in North America this week on the back of Masters of the Air, and we're kind of using it as kind of a sprat to catch a mackerel. We hope that people will be looking towards the east of England to see where this true life drama actually took place. They'll be looking at the museums and the airfields, particularly Thorpe Abbots, which is obviously the focal point of the whole series. But what we then want to do is expose potential visitors to our wider tourism offering, things like Cambridge, Norwich, Bury St Edmunds, and also the historical links that we have with North Americans.
It's an exciting time. We'll wait and see what happens. Pete Waters, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
It was really interesting chatting to Pete earlier about how much of a difference things like that can actually make to tourism and the numbers that come just to see that.
You wonder, don't you, how far it's going to go. And of course, it's on Apple
Yeah.
TV, so everyone's going to get to see it, and they're going to want to come to our part of the world. And who can blame them? And